Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Liberation, Chapter 10, the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, Ramachandra, verse number 54. So, this is about the pastimes of the glories of Lord Ramachandra. So, verse number 54. Ekapatni vratadharo Rajasi charita suchihi Swadharmam grihamedhiyam Shikshayam swayamacharat Ekapatni vratadharo Rajasi charita suchihi Swadharmam grihamedhiyam Shikshayan swayamacharet Ekapatni vratadharo Rajarsi charita suchihi Swadharmam grihamedhiyam Shikshayan swaramacharat
Kapatni Vratadaro
Kapatni Vratadaro
Rajashi Charita Shuchi
Rajashi Charita Shuchi
Swadharmam Grihamediyam
Swadharmam Grihamediyam
Shikshayan Swayamacharat
Shikshayan Swayamacharat
Ekapatni Vratadaro
Ekapatni Vratadaro
Rajashi Charita Shuchi
Rajashi Charita Shuchi
Swadharmam Grihamediyam
Swadharmam Grihamediyam
Shikshayan Swayamacharat
Shikshayan Swayamacharat Ekapatni Vratadaro
Ekapatni Vratadaro
Rajashi Charita Shuchi
Rajashi Charita
Shuchi
Swadharmam Grihamediyam
Swadharmam Grihamediyam
Shikshayan Swayamacharat
Shikshayan Swayamacharat
Ekapatni Vratadaro
Ekapatni Vratadaro
Rajarshi Charita
Rajarshi
Shuchi
Charita Shuchi
Swadharmam Grihamediyam
Swadharmam Grihamediyam
Shikshayan Swayamacharat
Shikshayan Swayamacharat Ekapatni Vratadhara taking a vow not to accept
Taking a vow not to accept
a second wife or to have any connection
a second wife or to have any connection
with any other woman.
with any other woman.
Okay. Raja Rishi,
Rajarshi,
like a saintly king.
like a saintly king.
Charitaha,
Charita,
whose character.
whose character.
Suchihi,
Shuchi,
pure.
pure.
Swadharmam,
Swadharmam,
one's own occupational duty.
one's own occupational duty.
Grahamedhiyam,
Grihamediyam,
especially of persons situated in household life.
especially of persons situated in household life.
Shikshayan,
Shikshayan,
teaching by personal behavior.
teaching by personal behavior.
Swayam,
Swayam,
personally.
personally.
Acharat, executed his duty.
Executed his duty.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. Lord Ramachandra took a vow to accept only one wife and have no connection with any other woman. He was a saintly king, and everything in his character was good, untinged by qualities like anger. He taught good behavior for everyone, especially for householders, in terms of Varnashrama Dharma. Thus, he taught the general public by his personal activities. Purport. Eka Patni Vrata. Accepting only one wife was the glorious example set by Lord Ramachandra. One should not accept more than one wife. In those days, of course, people did marry more than one wife. Even Lord Ramachandra's father accepted more wives than one. But Lord Ramachandra, as an ideal king, accepted only one wife, Mother Sita. When Mother Sita was kidnapped by Ravana and the Rakshasas, Lord Ramachandra, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could have married hundreds and thousands of Sitas. But to teach us how faithful he was to his wife, he fought with Ravana and finally killed him. The Lord punished Ravana and rescued his wife to instruct men to have only one wife. Lord Ramachandra accepted only one wife and manifested sublime character, thus setting an example for householders. A householder should live according to the ideal of Lord Ramachandra, who showed how to be a perfect person. Being a householder or living with wife and children is never condemned, provided one lives according to the regulative principles of Varnashrama Dharma. Those who live in accordance with these principles, whether as householders, brahmacharis, or vanaprasthas, are all equally important. ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकथमयं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवं च
Shri Rupam Samaratam Savanam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sadanavanitam Krishna Shakvitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagarpate Gopeshwar Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srimad Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Karidvanta Riragitya Shri Krishna Parivartita Paramananda Pathaya Prema Vashi Aksharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume Madeka Bandho Mat Sangin Mat Kuro Man Mahadhana Mat Nishtaraka Mat Bhagya Mat Ananda Namostute Asadu Saduto Dain Atini Chochata Kara Anamuncha Kadachin Mam Premna Het Kanthayo Spura. This section of Lord Ramachandra's qualities is quite nice. It describes specifically of the character of Lord Ram. And one of these qualities, actually not just one, in this particular verse we have many qualities that are described over here. The most important one, which Prabhupada obviously highlights, is the Eka Patni Vrata. But it's also talking about whose character, Charita Suchihi. He's very pure in character. Raja Rishi. So Raja Rishi also means the king, but Rishi means a saintly king, not just a normal king. Because anyone can be not anyone, but people can be a Raja. But to be a Raja Rishi is quite a qualification to have. And one interesting fact over here in the purport, in the verse that I found very interesting was, even though it's talking about Lord Ram, but there is a mention of Graha Medhiyam. So we know there is Graha Medhis and there is Grahastas. But here there is specific mention of Graha Medhis. And the translation that Prabhupada gives to that is, especially a person situated in household life. So we will discuss upon these elements also, on why specifically Graha Medhiyam is mentioned over here. And of course, Shikshayan Swayam, personally teaching by his own behavior, which we know is also the definition of an Acharya. And Acharat means he executed his duty or was an Acharya in that perspective. So by his own personal behavior. So many times we see kings or leaders, they're not the ones who are in the front of the battle. They're just sitting in their offices and just pressing the nuclear buttons for launching missiles or sending their armies across to different world. They don't go in the front. But here, of course, Lord Ram specifically sets example by his own personal behavior. So we will discuss more of these in the session today. Let's see how much time we have. Okay, so we will begin with specifically talking about one of the qualities that is mentioned over here, which is untinged by qualities like anger. So anger for kings, for Rajashis, for leaders is actually required sometimes, because if you're not angry, if you don't have the anger inside you, it's difficult to win battles. It's difficult to punish the miscreants. It's difficult to run a kingdom. But here the anger is actually described on the anger that is specifically shown when it is not required. So one of the examples in the commentaries of this particular verse, there is an example which is related to Jagai and Madai, which is of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's times. So many times there is a description that anger actually causes us to commit offenses many of the times, because if anger is not controlled, it leads to aparadh. And one of the reasons why Jagai and Madai became devotees is because they did not commit any Vaishnava aparadh, is one of the commentaries that it describes over here, which for me was quite new, and I didn't really think of it that way, that Jagai and Madai were able to become devotees because they did not commit a Vaishnava aparadh. They did it unknowingly, unintentionally, but at the same time, they had no intention of committing any aparadh. So, but on the other hand, in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, like for example, there was a personality called Ramachandra Kaviraj. So Ramachandra Kaviraj was committing offenses. So like at one particular moment, so he usually used to always, in many descriptions, it's described that he used to always blaspheme Nityananda, Haridas Thakur. But at one particular moment when Nityananda came to his house performing kirtan, he tried to throw Nityananda away. He apparently throwed some shoes, got some people to push them away completely, not let Nityananda enter his house. And Nityananda, of course, is known to be very merciful. So he knew that Ramachandra Kaviraj was quite, I don't know, rebellious against the devotees. But somehow Nityananda wanted to go towards him. And of course, Ramachandra Kaviraj was so much against Nityananda that as soon as Nityananda left the place, he got like a bucket of Ganga, and he started to purify the place because Nityananda was there, and it's not auspicious anymore. So that is considered to be an offense, because he considered Nityananda, knowingly he knew the glories of Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he also knew how Nityananda was spreading the holy name at that particular moment. Still, he considered to him a lowly person, and somehow even sprayed Ganga Jal. And of course, in the future, we see in many chapters later in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described that Ramachandra Kaviraj, his village was devastated completely. His character, was questioned, but at the same time, his village went through plague, the disease, and everything was wiped out. And of course, it's also mentioned that Vaishnava aparadh can wipe out the entire, not just our devotion, but even the person, whatever we achieve. So we always have to be careful about these elements over here. So anger, I've shown at the right time through the right situation, like what Ramachandra would do. So we saw in many of the Rama's pastimes also, Ramachandra showed specifically anger at the right time, specifically towards Ravana. Because if Rama did not have anger towards Ravana, it won't be a fun fight. Like imagine Narsingadev fighting with Hiranyakashipu, but without anger. It's just a doll fight. But anger as an element is required. But our scriptures warn us that anger is not to be used for devotees in the mood of Vaishnava aparadh. So that is something we always have to be careful about. So that is the element that is mentioned in this particular verse over here, that free of anger doesn't mean free of the right anger that we're supposed to have in general. Like, for example, our scriptures even tell us that if someone is offensive towards our guru, we have to be angry. We have to speak out. For someone who's offensive against the Lord, like specifically Mayavadis, like Prabhupada in so many places mentions about beating these Mayavadis, literally. Prabhupada even says like, I will become the shoe beating god, I will take the shoe and I will beat them. Like there was even this one pastime where there was this Mataji that apparently there was this, in India there was this birthday celebration of some so-called god, and she went on stage, she was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, she went on stage, she somehow took the neck of the apparent god and put it on the cake. Oh my God.
And it became a big scene. They even went and complained to Prabhupada that, she ruined the names of the devotees, she went on stage and she created public anger. And Prabhupada said, who is it? And apparently Prabhupada was very happy. Prabhupada said, very nice. What you did was very nice. You showed how he's not a god, because if he was god, he could control it. How can he allow his face to be on a cake? So that anger is okay. Of course, I don't know if we can do it here, but in France, but but of course, at least over here, we don't see it very common that people worship humans as God. But that anger is okay. That is required. So the other elements over here that are described over here is Eka Patni Vrata. So Eka Patni Vrata, of course, one of the reasons is to have control over lust, which some of the commentaries also describe over here. Like one of the commentaries links us to the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Nishta points. So Nishta means to be steady, is the quality of steadiness, and also it's another word that comes from Nishta is Naishchalyam. So to be steady in our activities every day is the one that can actually protect us from lust. And of course, there are 5 obstacles that are generally described which make it difficult for us to conquer lust. So, the 5 obstacles according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this comes under Madhurya Kadambini, which is Laya, which is the first one is sleep. Of course, it's the most important one, the most difficult for us, especially in a Bhagavatam class. Vikshepa is the distractions. And we have so many different distractions in the world today, whether it's technology, whether it's our own distractions in our mind. It's distraction is one of the major element that causes lust, because we are not focused, we are distracted, and therefore that causes vikshepa. Apratipati, indifference or disinterest in spiritual topics. Kashaya, Akashaya, tendency towards bad habits. Rasavada, taste for material enjoyment. So again, sleep, distraction, disinterest in spiritual topics, tendency towards bad habits, and taste for material enjoyment. So these 5 Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is describing are actually the main reason for us why it has to be important for Eka Prativatra following, which is quite an important one. Like, I was amazed at how all of these 5 things can be linked just to that. So one of the reasons, like for example, we see in our scriptures like Chitraketu in the Bhagavatam had millions of wives. I think 10 million, if I'm not mistaken. Like he had quite a number. Let me see if I have it written down. Like he had millions of wives, but no children at all. That was Chitraketu's story that we see. That's why he prayed and he got one son, but of course he was poisoned later also. Poor guy. So, and it's not that he was not potent. It is described that Chitraketu was potent as well, but by destiny he was not getting a child. But the fact is that he had millions of wives. Even Krishna, we see he had 16,108 wives. So there are so many descriptions. Even Rama's father in itself, how many wives there? He had quite a number of wives. Rama's father, I'm not sure of the number, but Dasharat, yes. 4. 4. Okay, that's so only according to. But of course, Prabhupada made it very clear. This was a question that was asked to Prabhupada in the early movement, that can we accept more than one wife? Because we see in the scriptures that polygamy or accepting more than one wife is considered to be accepted by our scriptural injunctions. So we're going to see more reasons of why that. But of course,
one of the first element over here is that even we see Chitraketu, and to be honest, even Ravana, many of the times these demons, they were quite knowledgeable. You see, they're talking about many shastrical points, they will talk many philosophical points, and they were quite learned in the particular, in the Vedic times. But Prabhupada pushed for Ekapatni Vrata even within our movement. And not just for a wife. This Ekapatni Vrata Prabhupada pushed for is to imbibe, to have only one worshipable God, which is for us. So for us is to have only one Deva Vrata, which is basically to worship only one God, is to worship only Krishna. Jai Shri Radha Paraseshwari Radha Sachi Sutta Chadra Subhadra. So, Prabhupada mentions in this Ekapatni Vrata, for us will be Eka Bhakti Vrata, which is a vow of exclusive devotion, which Prabhupada mentions. So, of course, in the Gita, Krishna explains that those who are exclusively devoted to me, I carry what they lack and they preserve what they have. So that's one. Exclusive devotion is an important element also. It's many, especially in the Vedic scriptures, we see there is a mention of demigod worship, like especially in the last 9 days, there's been so much worship of Durga that has been going on, specifically with the Hindu community. Eka Bhakti Vrata is something that is not really followed in most of the scriptures. Like, for example, my grandmother, she in her mind, in her thing is that if I enter a demigod house, it's like going to a prostitute house. Wow. So since childhood, she would always chastise any of us for even entering a temple, forget even worshipping. That's how strict many of the Vaishnava Sampradayas were. Like for them, even entering a demigod house is like I'm going to a prostitute, right? I left my relationship with the Lord. Wow. That was the details of the Eka Bhakti Vrata that used to exist in the Vaishnava Sampradayas in the olden times. So if we can follow that, then the Eka Patni becomes very easily acceptable. Because even with the Lord, if we go on cherry picking, because like for example, when Hanuman was captured by Ravana, he had the Brahmastra weapon that was used to capture him. But what happened is when he was in that palace of Ravana, where with the Brahmastra weapon, and Ravana was present as well. But somehow Ravana and his men thought that the Brahmastra might not be enough because Hanuman was very strong. So what they started to do is they took those big arrows and they took the various weapons and they start to control Hanuman to keep him there. But of course, as soon as they did that, what happened? The Brahmastra weapon was gone. Because one of the conditions of the Brahmastra weapon is that you cannot doubt its ability. If you doubt the ability of a Brahmastra weapon, the weapon is gone. Like the Brahmastra is no more applicable in that situation. So that's the same thing with the Lord as well. The time we doubt that maybe I can worship a demigod, maybe I can go to, it's okay to go to Ganesh, for example, to get some money, I will use it for Krishna's service, it's okay. But then Krishna's gone. Krishna doesn't stay in that particular place because that's why even in our altars, if we do keep demigods, then it doesn't really have this Eka Bhakti Vrata anymore because then Krishna is gone. Krishna is gone. Krishna is very jealous, possessive that way, As soon as he sees us that we are trying to get something from someone else, he says okay. And the funny part is Krishna makes it happen also. Krishna ensures that you get your desires from the particular demigod, so that, of course, we remain away from the Lord some way or the other. Because Krishna is, of course, we know he's not so easily achievable. So, Eka Bhakti Vrata is an important element for all of us to imbibe in our movement and in the future generations. We always have to ensure. Prabhupada was so strict with this. In one letter, Prabhupada even mentions that, okay, if you want to worship Ganesh, you have to donate $10,000 every month to me. Only then I can allow you to worship Ganesh. It's impossible. Prabhupada never allowed us to worship anyone else other than Krishna himself. So, going back to this, so this is about Eka Patni Vrata. But of course, in the Vedic scriptures, we see that in the traditional times, it was allowed for a man to have more than one wife. Because at that particular moment, so it's the same thing like, for example, dowry. Because it's banned in of course, most everywhere in the world except the Muslim countries, we generally decry dowry as an element. But Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam actually mentions the reasons of why the dowry was given in the traditional times. Like, for example, dowry was given because it's not that the woman does not get her share from her father's heritage or all her elements. She gets it, but at the time of her wedding, and generally it's given to her. It's also given so that the husband takes more responsibility of maintaining the wife, so that they can start a new life together, both of them. So Prabhupada mentions these elements in a few places in the Bhagavatam. So in the same way, even polygamy, again the same way, even though it's banned in almost all the countries except the Muslim countries, it was, in the traditional times, there were reasons behind it. So the first thing was, obviously, it was a social responsibility. It was more like to balance out the ratio of men and women. Many times in society we have that the population of women is more than the men, and to balance those elements out, it was described that the powerful men would take more responsibility by accepting more than one wife, multiple. But of course, there were conditions for it also, that they had to ensure that they were materially, they were providing emotional support. Like, for example, Krishna, he gave one palace to each of his wives. In the same way, like, one would not marry if one cannot maintain more than one wife in itself, financially, materially as well, and of course emotionally also, to provide stability, to provide the dharmic guidance. In a Varnashrama context also, because here also it's described religious duty. So a man with more resources in the traditional times would accept more wives, but not for sense gratification, but to give shelter. That was the element that was mentioned over here. And of course, as Krishna also mentions in the Gita, where it talks about protection of women specifically. So when the balance of population in terms of having more women is there, so to give protection, the men would marry, the kings would marry more than one wife at that particular moment. Prabhupada actually noted in some conversations that in Europe specifically, the population of women is more than the men. And he said that is a little bit of a dangerous situation. And Prabhupada said a polygamy would help, but not in Kali Yuga. At least in our movement, Prabhupada said no, we cannot have more than one wives at the same moment, in that particular moment. And also, of course, in a Vedic perspective, for a man to marry more than one wife is difficult also, because when a Vedic marriage ceremony happens, a man promises a wife that he takes away half her karma. And karma specifically is the bad karma, as we are talking about. And the woman gets half the good karma of the man. Of course, in the Vaishnava weddings, we many times say it's equal, you get half the karma on both sides. But in the Vedic weddings, it's not like that. A man gets half the bad karma, a woman gets half the good karma. So you can imagine if if the man is not pious enough and he marries more than one wife, what are the wives going to get out of the man? And in return, he accepts more bad karma. So it's a dangerous situation for a man in itself. So in the Vedic times, the kings and the people were so pious that they were able to give their piety to their wives. But of course, in today's times, it's not possible. So why is it important in Kali Yuga that we have this Eka Patni Vrata as an important element? Of course, quarrel and hypocrisy is the elements of Kali Yuga, and to maintain one is always a challenge. To have more than one is going to just controlling lust, having quarrel. It's unimaginable. It's difficult. So Prabhupada obviously said we should not do this in our movement. And Prabhupada obviously also mentions that Lord Rama could have married many wives, as was the custom, but he accepted only one wife. That is the ideal husband. And Sita Devi never accepted any man except Rama. That is the ideal wife. So, again, Lord Rama teaches us by that example, because we see, like, going back to the Vedic marriage ceremony, where a man accepts the karma of his wife, even if one gets divorced or gets separated, that Vedic vow that was taken in the yagya, that can never go away. So even though there is separation between man and woman, the karmic cycle actually continues. And there is no stoppage in the karmic cycle just by undergoing a separation or a divorce, because in the Vedic times, or once you take a vow in front of Agni, you cannot take it back. It's not given back. So that's why the importance of Ekapatni Vrata is even described in that perspective, that once you take a vow, your karmic cycle has started, and that's why the element of Varnashrama Dharma comes into place. But here, like I mentioned, Prabhupada's talking, the verse is talking about Griha Medi and not Grahasta. Prabhupada gives the definition of what is a Grahamedi and what is a Grahasta. Grahamedi many times is described as one who is stuck in the cycle. Medi is, in Sanskrit word, comes from the, so in the village there is a stick that is put in the ground, and the bulls are tied onto that stick, and they go round and round in the ground. Specifically for if they want to plow a particular place, so they would just put it in the center and they will allow the bull to go round and round, and so that's where the Medhi comes from. So Graha Medhi means one who is bound in the cycle, similar to what a bull would do in the whole cycle of karma, cycle of this whole material world, in so many different rituals and practices and karmic reactions. But here obviously it's mentioned with the perspective of Varnashrama Dharma. So Varnashrama Dharma also is actually a binding cycle. But of course, it's a gradual elevation from that binding cycle. Because technically, our goal in Krishna consciousness is not really to reach Sattva Guna, for example, which generally the Varnashrama Dharma incorporates. And that's why Prabhupada introduced the word Daivi Varnashrama. Prabhupada comes from the various scriptures also. Daivi Varnashrama Dharma, which is not just Varnashrama Dharma, but it's a transcendental Varnashrama Dharma where we use the Varnashrama cycle is to eventually purify ourselves to reach the Shuddha Sattva Gun and ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. But our goal is not Varnashrama Dharma. Our goal is to Daivi Varnashrama Dharma, is to go beyond the Varnashrama Dharma as a cycle. But because we are so contaminated, because we are so much of materialism inside us, therefore we need Varnashrama Dharma to be able to purify ourselves. And that's why we see Prabhupada in the last moment said 50% of his work is not completed yet. And that was the establishment of this Varnashrama Dharma. So if we actually notice Prabhupada's teachings, in the beginning stages of the movement, Prabhupada actually was not emphasizing so much on Varnashrama Dharma. But in the later movement, he specifically said that we are not purified enough. We therefore need the Varnashrama Dharma to be able to purify ourselves, to even call ourselves a devotee. And therefore, this establishment of this whole farm communities, grahastha circles, is an important element which we still have not accomplished in our movement, or we're trying to accomplish in some farm communities, like we have over here in New Mayapur as well. But of course, it's a long way to go in actually establishing a farm community, which Prabhupada would want, a self-sustained farm community where the grahasthas are engaged, where you have all the four varnas and the ashramas, of course, all of them being Vaishnavas, coming together to serve the Lord. And this Ekapatni Vrata will be possible in a bigger way when we are engaged in such a community as well, in such a Varnashrama Dharma situation also. So let's learn from Lord Ram and some way or the other imbibe ourselves. First, have this Eka Bhakti Vrata, that we never leave the Lord, and also do Eka Patni Vrata, some way or the other be engaged in a good Grahastha ashrama. There is so much to describe in Lord Rama's Charitra, but our time is up. So, any questions, any comments, anything you want to share? Yes, Ruth.
I found anger is the ornament of the Lord. When it's showing anger to protect his devotees, that it makes him more attractive. So spiritual anger is a good display for the Lord and the devotees.
There is also, I think, one rasas, right, which is anger, I think also.
Yes, Kuruda.
Kuruda, yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
In France, we have someone is called Bernard-Henri Lévy. And he often receives pie in the face.
Okay.
Because he's really corrupted.
Okay.
And therefore, citizens, when he's in the street, they try to put him a pie on the face.
Oh.
So similarly, Prabhupada, he would enjoy to put pie in the face of the Mayavadis who are corrupted.
So Prabhupada was French that way. Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Regarding anger also, it is explained in third canto Bhagavatam, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur very beautifully followed also previous acharyas before him. He's explaining this, and if we maintain material desires, it will lead us to make offenses towards others. And therefore, for the devotees, it's very important to practice pure bhakti, because anyabilashita shunyam, nullified all material desires, and otherwise, material desires, Vishwanath is explaining, will lead us to pride, and that's why offenses.
Right. Yeah.
So this is
yeah. Leads to pride. Yeah. I think pride and anger always come together. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. No more questions, comments. Okay. So thank you all. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai. Shanti Jai.